Are you not entertained? Gladiator wasn't just a historical epic about ancient Rome. It was a modern battlefield where actors bled real blood, legends died mid-production, and a director's vision nearly crumbled under the weight of impossible expectations. Behind the glory of the Colosseum lay a production so brutal that cast members were hospitalized, scripts were rewritten on the fly, and one of cinema's greatest performances was completed using digital necromancy after tragedy struck the set. We're about to reveal 20 shocking facts about Gladiator that will change how you see Maximus's journey forever. Plus, there's one bonus secret so dark that it nearly ended Russell Crowe's career before it truly began. Let's step into the arena. The script was being written during filming. Gladiator's production wasn't just chaotic, it was downright reckless. Ridley Scott began shooting without a completed screenplay, making it up as cameras rolled. The original script by David Franzoni was so incomplete that entire scenes were improvised on set. Russell Crowe famously refused to say certain lines, calling them garbage, and would storm off set when dialogue didn't meet his standards. The film's most iconic moments, including the strength and honor exchanges, emerged from desperate late-night rewrites. What audiences see as a cohesive epic was actually assembled from the wreckage of creative chaos. The cast never knew what their characters would do next because neither did the writers. Russell Crowe injured nearly every body part. Maximus may have been a gladiator, but Russell Crowe became one through sheer physical punishment. He fractured his foot during the opening battle sequence, but continued filming for weeks, limping through takes while hiding the injury from Scott. A horse fell on him during cavalry scenes, bruising his ribs so severely he required breathing treatments between takes. The sword-fighting sequences left permanent scars on his hands and arms. His hip was damaged during chariot work, an injury that plagued him for years afterward. Medical staff became permanent fixtures on set as Crowe's body gradually broke down. He later admitted that finishing Gladiator was more about surviving than acting. The warrior's wounds were real. Joaquin Phoenix's Commodus was based on his own dark psychology. Phoenix didn't just play Commodus, he excavated the character from his own psychological depths, creating one of cinema's most disturbing villains through method acting that bordered on dangerous. He spent months studying historical accounts of the real emperor while simultaneously drawing from his own experiences with family dysfunction and sibling rivalry. Phoenix refused to break character between takes, remaining cold and calculating even during lunch breaks. His co-stars found him genuinely unsettling. The incestuous undertones with Connie Nielsen's Lucilla weren't scripted. Phoenix improvised them, making Nielsen visibly uncomfortable during their scenes. The performance was so psychologically taxing that Phoenix required therapy afterward. Commodus wasn't acting, it was exorcism through cinema. The tiger scene nearly killed everyone. That terrifying tiger attack in the Colosseum wasn't CGI, it was real predator meeting real terror. 5 massive Siberian tigers were brought to the Malta set, each weighing over 400 pounds and trained by handlers who spoke different languages, creating a communication nightmare. During rehearsals, one tiger broke free from its restraints and charged toward the crew. Cameras kept rolling as animal wranglers desperately tried to regain control. Russell Crowe, in full armor, stood his ground as the tiger approached, later admitting he was certain he would die. The scene required 47 takes because the tigers kept behaving unpredictably. Insurance companies nearly shut down production after the incident. That primal fear you see in the gladiator's eyes? Completely authentic. Death was stalking the set with claws and fangs. They built an actual working Colosseum. Ridley Scott didn't just recreate the Colosseum, he built a functional amphitheater that could have hosted real gladiatorial combat. The Malta set covered 52 acres and rose 7 stories high, constructed from real stone quarried locally. The arena floor was engineered with a complex network of tunnels and hydraulic lifts, exactly like the original Roman design. Over 2,000 extras filled the stands during filming, creating an atmosphere so authentic that several historians claimed it was more accurate than modern archaeological reconstructions. The construction employed 200 local craftsmen working 16-hour days for 8 months. The structure was so solid that it remained standing for years after filming, becoming an unofficial tourist attraction. Scott had literally resurrected ancient Rome in the modern world. Oliver Reed's death changed everything. Oliver Reed's sudden death on May 2nd, 1999 wasn't just a tragedy, it was a production disaster that nearly destroyed the film. Reed, playing Gladiator trainer Proximo, died of a heart attack in a Malta bar after challenging Royal Navy sailors to a drinking contest. He had encountered a group of Royal Navy sailors from HMS Cumberland who were on shore leave at a bar and consumed a legendary amount of alcohol before collapsing. His character Proximo was meant to survive, but after Reed's death, the script was revised to include his death at the hands of the Praetorian Guard. The production shut down for a week while Scott rewrote the entire third act. Reed's remaining scenes were completed using digital face replacement and a body double, pioneering techniques that would later revolutionize filmmaking. His death became the film's most haunting behind-the-scenes story. The opening battle was filmed in an actual forest fire. The film's spectacular opening battle wasn't enhanced with visual effects. It was shot in the middle of a genuine forest fire in Germany's Bourne Woods. Scott wanted absolute realism for the Germanic tribal warfare, so when a controlled burn got out of hand, he kept cameras rolling. Actors fought their scenes while real flames roared around them, creating smoke so thick that breathing apparatus became necessary between takes. The forest fire department was on standby, but Scott pushed the limits of safety for cinematic authenticity. Trees crashed during filming, nearly crushing stunt performers. The heat was so intense that camera equipment began malfunctioning. Russell Crowe later described it as fighting a war inside hell itself. The primal chaos you see on screen came from dancing with actual disaster. Ridley Scott used real gladiator combat techniques. Scott didn't just study gladiatorial combat, he resurrected it with obsessive historical accuracy. He brought in ancient weapons experts and choreographers who had spent decades researching authentic Roman fighting styles. The combat sequences were based on archaeological evidence from Pompeii and historical accounts from Roman historians. Actors trained for months with replica weapons that were exact copies of archaeological finds. The fighting styles varied based on each gladiator class: Secutor, Retiarius, Thraex, each with distinct techniques and weaponry. Blood spatter patterns were studied and replicated. Even the crowd's reactions were based on historical accounts of actual games. The result was combat so realistic that several historians claimed it was the most accurate depiction of gladiatorial warfare ever filmed. Ancient Rome had been brought back to life, complete with its brutality. The Colosseum crowd was 80% digital. What appears to be 35,000 screaming Romans was actually achieved with only 2,000 real extras and groundbreaking digital crowd replication. This was 2000, when CGI crowds were still experimental technology. Scott worked with visual effects teams who individually animated thousands of digital spectators, each with unique movements and reactions. Motion capture actors performed crowd behaviors that were then multiplied and randomized across the arena. The digital Romans were so convincing that even film industry professionals couldn't distinguish them from real people. This technique became the blueprint for every massive crowd scene in modern cinema. The Colosseum audience was cinema's first great digital crowd, setting the standard for every epic that followed. Movie magic had evolved into digital alchemy. Russell Crowe almost died from a chariot accident. During the chariot racing sequences, Russell Crowe's vehicle flipped at full speed, sending him flying across the arena floor while horses thundered past his head. The accident happened during the film's most expensive sequence, with cameras capturing every terrifying second. Crowe was knocked unconscious and remained motionless as medical teams rushed onto the set. When he regained consciousness, his first words weren't about his injuries. He asked if they got the shot. The crash left him with a concussion, separated shoulder, and psychological trauma from nearly being trampled to death. Scott later admitted they almost lost their lead actor in a moment of authentic Roman spectacle gone wrong. Before we continue with these brutal behind-the-scenes secrets, go ahead and like and subscribe because these stories only get more shocking, and you won't want to miss what really happened when the cameras stopped rolling in ancient Rome. The famous Strength and Honor line was improvised. The film's most quotable moment wasn't scripted. It emerged from Russell Crowe's frustration with the dialogue he was given. During a particularly heated argument with Ridley Scott about the script's quality, Crowe declared he would only speak lines that felt authentic to a Roman general. Strength and honor became his go-to replacement for dialogue he deemed unworthy. The phrase appears 17 times throughout the film, each instance improvised by Crowe in the moment. It wasn't Roman. Historians confirm no such phrase existed in Latin military culture, but it became so iconic that actual military units began using it as a motto. Crowe had accidentally created a piece of fake history that became more real than the truth. Sometimes the best cinema comes from creative rebellion. Connie Nielsen was actually terrified of Joaquin Phoenix. Connie Nielsen's fear of Commodus wasn't acting. It was genuine terror of Joaquin Phoenix's method approach to the role. Phoenix remained in character between takes, treating Nielsen with the same cold manipulation that Commodus showed Lucilla. During their private scenes, he would improvise disturbing behaviors that weren't in the script, including inappropriate touching and whispered threats. Nielsen later revealed that she never knew when Phoenix was acting or when his own psychological darkness was emerging. Their most intimate scenes required multiple takes because Nielsen's discomfort was too obvious on camera. Phoenix's commitment to the role created an atmosphere of real psychological menace that translated into authentic on-screen tension. The brother-sister dynamic was genuinely toxic because Phoenix made it so. They used real severed heads. The decapitation scenes in Gladiator featured genuine severed heads obtained from medical supply companies and mortuaries. Ridley Scott insisted on practical effects over prosthetics for maximum visceral impact. The heads were preserved and weighted to behave realistically when thrown or displayed. Actors' reactions to these grisly props were completely genuine. Many cast members couldn't look directly at them during filming. Health and safety regulations required special handling procedures, and several crew members requested transfers to other projects after working with the heads. The authenticity of death permeated every aspect of the production. Scott's commitment to realism extended to using actual human remains, creating a movie that was literally built on death. The Gladiator school scenes nearly caused a riot. The Gladiator training sequences were filmed with 200 real martial artists and stunt performers who took their roles too seriously. Competition between different fighting groups became so intense that actual brawls erupted during breaks. Several gladiators were hospitalized with genuine injuries from unsanctioned fights. The atmosphere became so toxic that production hired security guards to separate competing factions. Method acting had transformed into genuine tribal warfare among the extras. Russell Crowe had to intervene personally to restore peace, using his authority as Maximus to calm the chaos. The warrior culture they were portraying had infected the cast, creating real violence that threatened to spiral out of control. Art was imitating life with dangerous authenticity. Hans Zimmer's score was written on napkins. Hans Zimmer composed Gladiator's iconic score under impossible pressure, often scribbling musical ideas on napkins and bar coasters while the film was still being edited. The famous "Now We Are Free" theme was written in 20 minutes during a dinner break, hummed into a dictaphone while Zimmer sat in his car. The epic battle themes were composed without seeing the final action sequences, forcing Zimmer to write music that could support any scenario. Orchestra sessions became exercises in improvisation as scenes were constantly being recut. The score that sounds so perfectly matched to the action was actually created in a state of creative chaos that mirrored the production itself. musical genius emerged from organizational disaster. The Spaniard backstory was added last minute. Maximus, being from Spain, was a last-minute addition that came from Russell Crowe's accent struggles. Originally written as a generic Roman, the character's Spanish heritage was invented when Crowe couldn't master a convincing Roman accent, but his natural Australian inflection could pass for Iberian. The Wheatfield dreams and family farm were created to support this new backstory, filmed during additional photography months after principal shooting ended. Crowe's wife and child were cast from local Spanish extras who had never acted before. The emotional core of the entire film, Maximus's desire to return home, existed only because the lead actor couldn't fake a different accent. Sometimes the most profound character elements come from practical limitations rather than creative inspiration. Real gladiators were consulted. Ridley Scott hired actual modern gladiator fighters, participants in historical reenactment combat leagues, to ensure authenticity in the arena scenes. These modern warriors who fight with replica weapons in organized competitions brought genuine combat experience to the choreography. Several suffered real injuries during filming, including broken bones and concussions, treating their movie roles as actual gladiatorial contests. Their commitment to authentic combat created an atmosphere of genuine violence that infected the entire cast. The line between performance and reality dissolved completely when real fighters portrayed ancient warriors. History was being lived rather than acted, creating a movie where the past and present collided with brutal authenticity. The film nearly bankrupted DreamWorks. Gladiator's budget spiraled so far out of control that it nearly destroyed the studio financing it. Originally budgeted at $60 million, costs eventually reached $103 million due to constant script rewrites, elaborate set construction, and Oliver Reed's death. DreamWorks executives visited the set multiple times, threatening to shut down production entirely. The Malta location, chosen for tax benefits, proved extremely expensive when equipment had to be shipped across the Mediterranean. Weather delays added weeks to the schedule, inflating costs daily. Studio insurance covered some of Reed's death-related expenses, but the film remained a massive financial gamble until its release. Success wasn't guaranteed. It was a desperate bet that almost collapsed before audiences could see the final product. Russell Crowe's accent changed throughout the film. Listen carefully to Maximus throughout Gladiator, and you'll hear Russell Crowe's accent shifting dramatically from scene to scene. Early scenes feature a more refined Roman pronunciation, while later scenes revert to Crowe's natural Australian inflection filtered through his attempts at Spanish. The inconsistency came from scenes being filmed months apart, with Crowe's accent work deteriorating under the pressure of production chaos. Dialogue coaches were brought in repeatedly, but continuity was impossible to maintain across the extended shooting schedule. The character's voice literally changes as you watch, creating an unintentional audio timeline of the production's struggles. Most audiences never notice, but once you hear it, the vocal inconsistency becomes impossible to ignore. The final battle was filmed in complete darkness. The climactic duel between Maximus and Commodus was shot using only firelight and torches, forcing the crew to develop innovative lighting techniques that influenced action cinematography for decades. Traditional film lighting would have destroyed the intimate atmosphere Scott wanted, so cinematographer John Matheson pioneered new methods for shooting in near darkness. Actors couldn't see their marks and relied entirely on instinct and rehearsal. Multiple cameras captured every angle because reshooting was impossible in the complex lighting setup. The darkness created genuine tension among the performers, adding authentic uncertainty to their movements. The technique was so successful that it became standard for dramatic confrontations in action films. Technical innovation emerged from creative necessity, changing how movies portrayed violence forever. Russell Crowe smuggled his own blood into scenes. Here's the secret that studios tried to bury. Russell Crowe was so committed to authenticity that he secretly used his own real blood in several crucial scenes. During the opening battle, when Maximus's hands are cut by his sword, that's genuine blood from Crowe's actual injuries. He refused medical attention between takes, allowing his wounds to bleed naturally onto his costume and weapons. The blood spatters on his armor throughout the film aren't movie magic. They're Russell Crowe's actual plasma preserved by makeup teams and reapplied for continuity. Studio executives never knew their lead actor was literally bleeding for his art. Insurance companies would have shut down production immediately if they had discovered this level of method acting. Crowe's performance wasn't just committed, it was consecrated with his own life force. 24 years after its release, Gladiator remains cinema's most brutal production masquerading as an epic. What audiences see as a story of honor and revenge was forged in real blood, genuine terror, and creative chaos that nearly destroyed everyone involved. The film's power comes not from its fictional gladiators, but from the real warriors who survived its making. Did these brutal behind-the-scenes secrets change how you see the movie? Drop a comment and let us know which fact shocked you most. And remember, in the arena of filmmaking, we who are about to create salute you. Are you not entertained?